Yeah, I've been reading a book on exclusion and embrace, and how it's important to embrace others and people, especially those people, and include them as part of who we are. That there's really no such thing as a distinct individual. Every individual is a product of his own experiences and the other people in his life that are a part of him, and vice versa. We're a part of others. So being in touch with all of that is really a part of understanding our own individuality and masculinity and gender issues and all kinds of different things. And I was reading a book talking about that, and it triggered some things about how judgmental and I can be toward people, and how important my wife is, and how a lot of times I've let little things like what she does trigger judgment behavior that's sabotaging the intimacy in our relationship. So there's this song about loss called the grieving years, or the living years. It could be the grieving years, but it's called the living years. And one of the choruses says that it's too late when we die to admit we don't see eye to eye. And I thought, yeah, you need to reconcile and do those things when the person is still breathing. My great-grandmother used to have a little, she lived to be 96, by the way, used to have a little plaque that said, "Give me my flowers while I live." And I think that's true of anything. If I have a problem with a parent or a significant person, best time to deal with them is when we're still alive and we can work it out. Because once the person's dead, there are ways to do it, but it's not quite the same. And that stuff don't die with them, it stays with you. And so it's important, to do that stuff in the living years. And that part, and I think it doesn't start with me and them, it starts with me and me. And so, and that can be a piece too. Once you recognize the you and you stuff, it can trigger how much of yourself and how much of who you are and how much of the really important things about you kind of got lost or damaged along the way. And you need to grieve that. You need to grieve that, and you need to grieve the losses of the other. So,
can you talk a little bit about the connection between addictions and grief?
Yeah, I think grief is a basic reaction to addiction. It underlies a lot of the addictions. One of the most common aspect of addiction is loss. Anybody who's an addict has lost a great deal, beginning with their true self. And if you grew up in an addictive family, you've lost significant things like your childhood and a loving parent-child connection. As an adult, you lose important things like respect and dignity and capacity for healthy relationships, and more tangible things like jobs and money and freedom and physical problems, things of that nature. And all those losses pile up, and they don't go away. They're cumulative, and they don't get better until you not only experience them, but you mourn them. You have to experience the loss and get it out and feel it and cry and whatever you need to do. And that's a little tougher in our society and in our culture. And if you're male, it's even more so, because men are supposed to be tough. Heck, man, I'm a combat Marine. Old sissy boy couldn't go out and start crying about this stuff. And I was in Vietnam as a Marine Corps infantry at Da Nang, and I had a lot of loss as a result of being over there. So what we do a lot of times when we get overwhelmed is we shut down those feelings. And I can intellectually understand the loss, but I can't experientially mourn it. And so it gets hung up, it gets carried away. Or what addiction allows me to do is self-medicate it. If I drink or drug, then I medicate it. It's there, but it don't bother me now. It's like but it doesn't go away, and eventually it's like when the Novocaine wears off when you leave the dentist. Well, he's got you numbed up. He could go in there with a jackhammer, it wouldn't bother you. Other addictions like gambling and sex just distract you from it. And it does the same thing in a different way, but it doesn't go away. And until I deal with it, it's going to be there. And so I think, and one of the most significant aspects for addicts, once they stop the addictive behavior, is a lot of times is they'll have all these unresolved grief and loss issues they need to face, which is a real important part of recovery and getting well and healing those things. And a lot of them are me and me losses, as well as me and out here losses. And they're both significant. So that's an addiction that just comes with the deal.
So this idea is good grief, right?
Yeah.
So what would be a good step, or what are some steps that you found helpful towards your grief and mourning?
Okay. Well, the first thing you need to do is identify that you have experienced a lot of loss. In my experience, I ended up in a coma and lost an arm and leg, and that's pretty tangible. But it's still, the part I couldn't see was how it affected my whole sense of who I was, and the loss of that whole thing, and my role as a father and a husband and productive person in the world, because my whole value was based on my physical ability, and so I had to grieve that. And so the key thing in dealing with grief is you need safe people and safe places where you can be honest about it and mourn it, and give yourself permission to do whatever you have to do to get through it. And there are people that can help you with that. And trust yourself. Grief is something we've been doing as human beings for thousands of years. And there's no right way to do it, and there's no one way to do it. It's a very personal process. So trust that process and give yourself permission and see where it takes you. And if you need help, it's there. Don't be afraid to ask for help and get support in what you need to do. I never needed it, of course, but I knew this guy. But yeah, definitely, we all do. There's a concept in recovery that just says, without help, without help it is too much for us. And then the rest of that line is, but there is one who has all power, and that one is God. May you find him now. And so don't underestimate his capacity to help you either. He knows exactly what you need to do, and if you give him half a chance, he can help you with that. Been my experience.
That's awesome.
All right.